Okay, you guys, so this is going to be a bit of a different video than the way I typically do my videos. And the reason for that is because at the time that this goes up, it will be my 1-year anniversary on this channel of uploading these types of videos. Like I've mentioned before, I actually had started this channel several months before I started uploading reaction and review videos on a regular basis. But that was a video that just had nothing to do at all with what I ended up wanting to do with the channel. So I hid it, made it private, whatever, and decided that I would just focus on this sort of stuff. And so that first day of uploading, which was for a reaction and review of the trailer, The Farewell, because that was on my mind a lot that particular day. And so today, as of the day this is up, it has been 1 year. So I wanted to do something a little bit different for the 1-year anniversary, the big anniversary. And what I had thought about doing for a long while was, well, someone had suggested it to me and I thought about doing it anyway, but their suggestion kind of put the idea more firmly in my head. It's just taken many months for me to get around to doing it. What I'm going to do is, well, I've talked a lot about my top favorite movies, like my top 10 favorite movies. I've mentioned maybe a few titles here and there, but I haven't done an actual official list. Even for myself, I haven't for the first time ever sat down and written an actual official list. I will have to say that the way I'm filming this video is going to be a little different, and I hope I'm able to pull it off technically. I'm not sure. We'll see. But anyway, if I have some issues, bear with me. I'll try to make it be very, smooth and everything as it goes along. But on my list, the top one, of course this would happen while I'm filming. The top 1 or 2 slots, they are firm. They don't change. It's everything below that could come and go. It's been pretty consistently the same movies though for a good while. There's not really any particular super strong order for the things below, like number 1 or below 1 and 2. It's just a matter of how I feel at that particular moment. So while I'm going to count down from 10, that doesn't necessarily mean it's has any less or greater value to me than maybe the one that came before or after. It's just how I felt when I sat down and put the list together. So I'm going to proceed with movie number 10.
Growing up, we all want to know the toughest kid in the neighborhood was, right? I want to know the toughest man on the planet is. That's what we're going to find out.
The Warrior, starring Joel Edgerton and Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte, Jennifer Morrison. I believe that's the name of the actress who played the wife of Joel Edgerton. This was, I remember when it came out and I was only mildly interested in it. Then my brother told me how good it was and I watched it. This did make my list of the top 10 films, my top films of the decade. It's a story of 2 estranged brothers who end up meeting each other in the final match of this huge MMA competition. And so, there's all that, there's drama because of their broken relationship, which was caused by their alcoholic father, played by Nick Nolte, who did a fantastic job, you guys. He was so good in this movie. So that background obviously added a layer of an extra depth or an extra layer of just anxiety over what was going to happen, because as you're watching this movie, you pull for both of these guys. You like them both. One is obviously more troubled than the other, but he's not a bad guy, and they just have these issues. It's so beautifully done, you guys, and that the final scene at the end, it has been one of my favorite ending scenes in most of the movies that I've seen. I really, really love it. You'll have to see it to get what I'm saying. I have had one person who kind of like laughed at it and thought it was kind of silly and ridiculous, but I thought it was very well done. And the score, the music that was playing at the time, just beautiful, you guys, beautiful. And this is a movie that I have never forgotten, and I thought about it a lot after I saw it that first time, and I've seen it several times since then, and it remains such a good movie. This sort of film, a character drama, is not typically something that I really gravitate toward, as I've said many times before in my other videos, but there was something about the way this was done. It was so captivating, and it just really pulled me in that I made an exception for this film, and it ended up in, you know, as far as what I liked, and it ended up in my top 10 slot. So now, moving on to number 9.
If you want to believe in magic, in beauty, in friendship, and freedom, believe in the Black Stallion.
The Black Stallion. You guys, I love horses. They're so gorgeous. I don't really ride them much. I think the last time I was on a horse was when I was in college, and I took a horseback riding class because it was an elective I got to pick, and it was like, that's awesome. I'm going to do it. So I used to read these books when I was a teenager. So I obviously, you know, though I had a connection with this, you know what, to tell you the truth, I cannot recall if I read the book first or watched the movie first. It doesn't matter. I love them both. The first movie is, to me, the best. I saw the second one too. Not quite as good. It's sad. It's really sad, the second one. And I hated the way that it ended. Not that it had a bad ending, but just a sad ending, you know, kind of bittersweet. But anyway, there's something just so sweet and magical about this first movie. The synopsis is there is a young boy and his father. I think it takes place in like the 40s or 50s, something like that. Young boy and his father, they're on a ship. I don't even know where they were going to or coming from or whatever. I don't recall. But the ship goes down, and the only survivors was the only survivors were this little boy and this Arabian stallion, and they're stuck on this island. And so the stallion is wild. I mean, he's just like, he's not very easily tamed, and he doesn't like people. But as they are on this island, they have to learn how to survive, and they end up forming a bond. And then eventually they get rescued, and the story progresses from there to other things. I don't want to say too much in case you guys have not seen it. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's so good. The music is good. The cinematography is gorgeous. The acting is very well done. Mickey Rooney shows up in here as an old friend, that an older guy that the kid befriends. And Terry Garr plays his mother. And the scene at the end, the final climax of the movie, is just amazing. I loved it. Very, very powerful. About as impactful to me as the scene of the ending scene of The Warrior. The Warrior probably a little bit more so because it's all humans involved. But you know, not that it's a step down because it's an animal and human involved or whatever. But it's a little different. The chemistry felt different, but still just absolutely gorgeous. And it's well worth the watch, if not for that final, the climax alone of this movie. So that's number 9. Moving on to number 8.
Aurora and Don Bluth Productions present a classic adventure in motion picture entertainment. I must tell you about Nim.
The Secret of Nim. This was a cartoon that I saw, an animated movie that I saw decades ago. I was a teenager at the time. I couldn't tell you how old exactly, but I watched it. I remember when it came out in theaters. I remember seeing stuff about it in the stores. I can't remember if I saw commercials like when I would be at a friend's house or family member's house, but I remember the movie memorabilia that I would see, coloring books or books and stuff like that. And I finally got around to watching the movie. I think I saw the movie for the first time when we rented it from the library way back when they would give you the films on big, huge projector rolls, and you would, reels, and you would put it on the projector, feed it through there, and watch it like on your wall or something. That's what we did for a lot of the films that I saw when I was in my teens and stuff. So this was one of the films that we watched, or that I watched. I can't remember if the rest of my family watched it with me. Anyway, I fell in love with this movie. From the first moment that I saw it, I absolutely loved it. The voice acting in here was great. Dom DeLuise plays the crow, the crow there to the right of the main character. The premise of the story, I was about ready to combine the word premise and synopsis. That would have been funny, wouldn't it have? It's late, as you know, like always. The premise of the story is about this little mouse. Her name is Mrs. Brisby, and her son Timmy is sick with pneumonia, and she's trying to get some help for him. She's a newly widowed mother, young mother, and as she goes on her journey to try to find help for her son, it ends up becoming clear that her house physically needs to be moved because they're in like a farmer's field, and the farmer's going to come through with his tractor. And she runs into this group of rats who live down in like this area in the farmer's land, like under the well, like someplace underground. And these are highly intelligent rats. And she finds out more about them, and she finds out about her husband's past that she never knew. And these rats came from NIM, the National Institute of Mental Health. They had been lab rats. And these experiments that had been done on them when they were in the lab made them intelligent. And so they were different than your typical rat. So anyway, there's some intrigue, action, comedy, some touching, sweet moments. The animation is very well done, and like I said, the voice acting is really good. Dom DeLuise is one of the best parts of this movie, and the voice actress who did Mrs. Brisby, the main character, I can't remember her name, Elizabeth Hartman or something Hartman. Anyway, a sad story about her is that not too long after this movie came out, which I think was like in the early-ish 80s, maybe 83, 82-ish, around there. It wasn't, I might be totally wrong, but I think that's what it was. It wasn't too terribly long after this film came out that she committed suicide. She obviously had some struggles, in her life, and it just became too much for her, and she took her own life. But certainly this is something worth checking out, even if you're not really into animated shows or movies, stuff like that. It's worth a watch. It's great. It was a Don Bluth film, I think that was the company that worked on this. Yeah, Don Bluth says it right there. Okay, moving on to number 7.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago.
Halloween, 1978. This movie scarred me for life. At the same time, it is my very favorite horror movie of all time. Nothing has been able to beat it. I've seen this movie so many times. I watch it every Halloween. I have watched all these different DVD versions of it, listened to the commentaries. I know a lot about this movie. Like I said, it scarred me. I saw it when I was way too young as a child, and I continue to have nightmares about Michael Myers. I'm a full-grown adult, you guys. I'm many decades old. I shouldn't still be having nightmares about something that scarred me as a kid, a fictional character, a fictional story, and yet I do. And I don't know if that's why it's my favorite, because I just have this really weird connection with this emotional, intense connection with this movie, or if it's because the movie's actually very good. or if it's both. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm stuck with this movie in my head. It won't leave me. I'll always think of this film when I think of any sort of horror movie. And who knows, because I'm talking about Michael Myers, I might end up having a freaking nightmare about him tonight. It would not surprise me. Anyway, this movie was very well done, pretty cheaply made, as far as, the cost of movies go. There's just so much trivia I could share about this. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but if you don't know it by now, which I would be truly surprised if you don't, the premise of the story is that this kid, he killed his older sister when he was 7 or 8, something like that. And he gets taken off to a mental institution. And then when he turns 21, he ends up breaking out. And he goes back to his hometown and he just starts killing people. I mean, he's a faceless, because he wears a mask the whole time, pretty much the whole time, except for a little tiny clip at the end. Very short shot. And you don't know what's his deal. Why is he doing this? He never talks. You hear this freaky, creepy breathing that he does behind his mask. That was really creepy. I remember that from a kid. I mean, from the time when I was a kid, how much that creeped me out to hear that. And the story follows Laurie Strode, the main protagonist. She's the one who kind of notices things are not right. She spots him, and she just, she gets a feeling, and it ends up, coming to this showdown basically between the two of them. I mean, that's what it's going to be because, well, you can just tell as the movie's going on, even if you you watch the trailer and you get that. Donald Pleasance played in here as the psychiatrist, and he knows the danger that Michael Myers poses to society, this neighborhood that he's gone back to. And so he's trying to warn the law enforcement of the town. So he goes back there to try to stop him. He was so expensive. Well, it's not that he was horrendously expensive, but he was a big name actor at the time. And John Carpenter, when he was making this movie, he was pretty fresh out of film school, I think. And he didn't have a ton of money. And they could only afford to hire Donald Pleasance for 4 days. This is what I've heard. 4 days. So he had a lot of filming that had to be done in those 4 days. And anyway, it was just here. I'm getting into trivia, and I said I wasn't going to, because I could talk about this movie a lot. But I'm going to stop and move on to the next movie. But I'm going to tell you that I cheated a little bit on my list. I said top 10, but honestly, you guys, there are some movies that I can't leave out because they're sort of connected to ones that made this list. So, having said that, I'm going to move on to number 7.5. This was 7. This is 7.5. So I like 7, but 7.5 is so closely behind it, I can't really separate the two. And 7.5 happens to be...
I've waited for him.
Halloween 2018. Now, I have seen all of the Halloween sequels, and I like some better than others. I think my favorite sequel, not counting this, is Halloween H2O. Halloween it was 20 years later. It came out in 1998. In my mind, the perfect Halloween trilogy was Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween H2O. Now, I don't like Halloween 2 very much. It starts off okay, not too bad, but then it starts to kind of crumble and fall apart midway to the end, because then he becomes like almost superhuman, and he's walking down hallway corridors, or she's running down hallway hospital corridors that are practically black, and that's not, like all the lights practically off. That doesn't happen in hospitals. That's one thing I don't like about horror movies. When they show them in the hospital, they always have the lights way down, and that's not the case in the hospital. The lights are bright pretty much 24/7 in the hallways. So anyway, but it got really ridiculous at the end. But because Halloween H2O directly references the events of Halloween 2, I kind of kept those in my head as the perfect trilogy. Well, When Halloween 2018 came around, they had said they were getting rid of everything that came after the original and, you know, between the original and Halloween 2018. So I was like, that's cool. I'm excited. I started hearing rumblings that there were positive reviews, and then I didn't want to find out anything more. I didn't watch any trailers or anything, didn't read any reviews, and I went to go see this movie, and holy cow, you guys, it was so freaking good. John Carpenter came back to work on the score with his son, and the dude who played Michael Myers, Nick Castle, he came back a little bit. He didn't play Michael the whole time. There was just one scene where he shows up, and it was the scene in, I'm not going to say. He shows up at some point in the mask. Obviously, you never see his face, so you don't know who is who. I only knew because I can't remember if Nick Castle said it or if the guy who was mostly playing Michael said what scene it was. Anyway, I got trivia I know about this too. One is that the dude who played Michael Myers, I cannot remember his name, but the guy who played Michael Myers, he actually used to be roommates with a professional hitman who gave him tips on how he should act. I was like, well, that's creepy. Anyway, that was a tangent. But yeah, Halloween 2018, it was very well done. The score was magnificent. The storytelling was very good. The final climax at the end just had me on the edge of my seat. It didn't creep me out as bad as the original Halloween did. But of course, you know, I was a full-grown adult by the time I saw it, so I could handle it. But still, you know, whatever. These two movies go together very, very well. And probably now, I'm just going to make, well, I have since the movie came out. There's been one Halloween between whatever. Now I'm going to make it to where instead of just Halloween 1978 that I watch also right afterwards, Halloween 2018. I like that it showed what happened to Laurie Strode after, the decline that she had in her life and how it messed up her relationships because of this traumatic thing that had happened to her in the 1978 movie. Anyway, I'm really excited for the next two films coming out. The next one, it was Halloween Kills. That was supposed to come out this October, but it has been delayed more than a whole freaking year. So I have to wait until October 2021 in order to see the next one. And then the last one will be the next October 2022. I hope that this wraps up in a good way for Laurie. I'm fearful that she's going to end up being killed. I think that would absolutely suck. And so I hope I'm wrong. Okay, that's it for that one, you guys. Moving on to number 6.
The war itself had become more perilous. The weapons had evolved. But our orders remained the same. Hunt them down and kill them off, one by one.
Underworld. This is one of those movies that I really wish I had seen in the theaters because holy cow, you guys, this movie is so much fun. I love the look of it. I love the acting. I love the action. I love the story. Kate Beckinsale is phenomenal in here. To me, she is. I mean, she is so kick-ass and she is so cool. I mean, my goodness, the black suit she has on and her hair and the way her eyes turn blue and the way she wields those guns. She is just a badass, you guys. She's so cool in here. I love vampire stories. I like werewolf stories, not quite as much as vampire stories, but this movie takes the two and combines them. This is such a perfect union of the two different types of horror characters. The premise of the story is that she is a vampire. She's called a death dealer, and she basically hunts down werewolves. That's what she does. There's been this feud between vampires and werewolves for centuries, and there's a reason for that. That gets explained as the story goes on. There have been several sequels to this film. None of them as good as the first, obviously. The second film was a sequel that started directly after the events of the first one. And then the third movie was a prequel, which told the events that led up to the feud. That was okay. It wasn't really as well done as I feel like it could have been, but it was still fun to watch. I've seen all the sequels. I think there were 2 after number 3, so I think there have been maybe 5. Those latest ones are really weak and not very well done, and it's a shame because this first movie was so good. They almost really should have just stopped. I mean, I've watched them anyway, just because, but nothing really, or none of them really hold a candle to the first one. The way the whole thing is filmed, I like the color palette that like this is like this, like, kind of like a bluish, grayish cast to it, dark, just very well done. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It would have been so much fun to watch this in the theater. I really am bummed that I did not go see it. I remember seeing the commercials for it, but didn't go check it out. Didn't really have much of an idea at the time what it was about, and then I saw it later. I'm like, oh, this movie is awesome. So that's why it made my top 10 list. Okay, moving on to number 5. The Dark Knight. This movie is phenomenal. Heath Ledger was fantastic in this film. He just was. Don't even try to fight me on this, you guys. From the moment he was cast, actually, I heard people saying that there was a big uproar and that they thought he was a terrible choice. To be honest, I never felt that way. I always felt like he was going to be fine, and I didn't really have a ton of exposure to him from before. I mean, gosh, honestly, I don't even remember what I may have seen him in before this, honestly. Did I say that twice? Honestly? I don't know if I did see him in anything before The Dark Knight, but I knew of him and I had seen clips of him. That's going to bug me now, whether I saw him in stuff before or not. I mean, I knew who he was. It was not any sort of mystery. But anyway, whatever. I got good vibes from him as the choice. And I saw this movie, I think, 3 times in the theater. It was so good. His acting was amazing. He actually outdid Christian Bale, and I liked Christian Bale. I feel like Christian was a wonderful pick for Batman. I really enjoyed Batman Begins. Dark Knight comes out, and it was so good. Just very well written, very well acted. The music, the score was just kept you, during certain moments. I think Hans Zimmer did it. He also did the score for Batman vs. Superman. And I didn't realize that right away until I'm watching Batman vs. Superman, maybe the extended cut. And the soundtrack is like this constant stuff in the background, and it's kind of building tension in you and you don't even know it, but it's building up. I'm like, you know what? That reminds me of the music in The Dark Knight. That slow building of just the background, and it just builds and builds, and it's subtle at first. And I looked it up. Yeah, same guy. Anyway, whatever. The whole thing is really good. If you have not seen it yet, shame on you. But the premise is, obviously, it's Batman and Joker. Joker shows up, he causes mayhem, chaos, whatever. But you've got to watch this for Heath Ledger's performance alone. Phenomenal job, you guys. Go check it out if you haven't. So, okay, moving on to number 4.
Michael and Sam have just moved to Santa Carla, California.
Say hello to the night, lost in the shadows. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to just talk. The Lost Boys. My absolute favorite vampire movie of all time, period. Nothing has ever beaten it, not even Underworld, but they're 2 completely separate feels, okay? They're just different. Lost Boys, I have loved this movie ever since I saw it. I developed a huge crush on Kiefer Sutherland when I saw it. And it's just, I remember hearing about this when I was in high school. My best friend went to go see it in the theater, and she came the next day and she was telling me in history class, she was telling me about these different scenes and how good it was. And I remember her specifically talking about the scene where they were hanging underneath the railroad tracks and then they fell down, and I was like, wow, that sounds really good. That sounds really good. And I watched it and I was so hooked by this thing. It's super 80s stuff, you guys. Flashy clothes, big hair, and but it's so nostalgic and it's so well done. The story is so fun and funny. It's a lot of comedy in here. It's considered a horror, obviously, but is it really? I mean, is it really? It's not really a horror. Yeah, there's vampires and they're killing people, but it's not a horror movie, y'all. It's like a fun ride. There's nothing scary about it at all. Not to me, anyway. I think most people probably is not scary unless you're a little child, in which case you really shouldn't be watching things like that when you're very little. Whatever. Anyway, the premise of the story is this newly divorced mother and her 2 teenage sons, they moved to Santa Carla. Yeah, Santa Carla. I always get it mixed up with Claire. Santa Carla, which is a fake town in California. They moved there, and they eventually find out that there are some strange things going on there. People going missing. Vampires are a thing, and maggots and worms are also a thing. And if you haven't seen it, you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say that. You need to get on this. Like now. Just turn this video off if you've made it this far through my rambling and just go watch it. It's a lot of fun, you guys. A lot of fun. Moving on to number 3.
Most of the intelligence community doesn't believe he exists. The ones that do call him the Winter Soldier. He's a ghost. You'll never find him.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Okay, you guys, this is my favorite MCU film of all time. Nothing has been able to beat it, not even Infinity War, not even Civil War, not even Endgame. I enjoyed all those movies. I've enjoyed most Marvel movies, with the exception of one, which I absolutely despise, and that's Captain Marvel. Thor, the second Thor, is pretty close to that, but I'd rather watch that 50 times over before I watch Captain Marvel ever again. I hate Captain Marvel so much, I'm not even going to add it to my DVD collection. Anyway, The Winter Soldier, such a fun film, and I honestly don't know if it's because, oops, sorry, I had to turn my fan on because my computer's getting really hot. I feel like I'm going to need to pause this recording in a bit. Sorry about that. Anyway, what I was saying is, I don't know if my absolute love of this movie is because the first Captain America was a disappointment. I didn't despise it, but I was not as blown away by it as I was hoping that I would be. So it was disappointing. And then the second one came out, and I saw the trailers, and they looked interesting, but you know, I didn't really hold out a huge amount of hope. I just went to see it, and I was blown away. The storytelling was really good. I loved the conflict between the Winter Soldier and Captain America. When I went in to see the movie, by then I did know who Winter Soldier was. But before I saw it, when I was watching a trailer with my brother, he told me who the Winter Soldier was supposed to be. And he said, I've mentioned this before, I'm pretty sure. He said that, oh, everybody knew who this character was. Well, I'm like, I did not know because I never read those comics. I didn't even know who the Winter Soldier. I'd never even heard of the Winter Soldier. So anyway, go to watch the Winter Soldier, and it was so much fun. I think I only saw it once in theaters, but I have seen it multiple times since then. It is so good. The acting is very well done. It really felt to me like Chris Evans just really fit. He filled this role so much better to me than he did in the first one. Like it felt more natural. It felt like he had settled in to his part as Captain America, and he had more depth to him. I just connected with him a lot better in this second movie. And then of course the story of the Winter Soldier and the enigma that he was and how dangerous he was, and this conflict that they had with each other, and then Steve finding out who he was, and then the climax at the end. And one of my favorite chase scenes in almost any movie that I've seen, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just because it stuck with me so much because I was getting really into this by the time this chase scene happened. And that was the scene with Nick Fury when the people were coming after him. When you first see the Winter Soldier, basically, the scene where he's kind of like barricaded by these cars and he's, his vehicle that he's in is having some technical issues, and, it's just, things are just really, the tension is really, really, really it's just ramping up. And then here comes the Winter Soldier, and his intro was just phenomenal. It was so much fun. All of the chase and action scenes in here were really good. At the time, I wasn't crazy about Black Widow because I didn't really like Scarlett Johansson very much at all. She has grown on me now that her character's dead. But anyway, whatever. It took her death for her to grow on me. But now that she's grown on me, I appreciate her character even more as I watch it. And I don't think any MCU film will surpass this for me as my favorite MCU film of all time. I just can't see that happening. I think the MCU's best days are behind it. So really, I don't think there's any chance of any film overtaking this one for me. And so because I enjoyed it so much, it made my top 10. Okay, moving on to number 2. Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman, you guys. This movie had such an impact on me. I think mostly because I was so afraid they were going to screw it up. Wonder Woman was my childhood hero. As I've said before, yes, I was the kid that went outside and twirled around and removed their clothes and had Wonder Woman outfit underneath. That was me. I loved her. I read her comics a lot when I was a kid. I think that was I read X-Men and Spider-Man and Batman and Spider-Woman and Dazzler and but Wonder Woman was always one of my favorites. So I really liked the show that was on, with Linda Carter in the 70s. And then finally they got around to making a live action version. And when they announced Gal Gadot was going to be Wonder Woman, I was not impressed at all. I've mentioned this before in another video. Was not impressed at all. I was as down on her as you could be. And then she showed up in Batman vs. Superman. She showed up as Diana Prince. I'm like, okay, she's looking okay as Diana Prince, but that's different. She wasn't in her full-on outfit yet. And then when she showed up at the end, holy cow, I was like a little child inside screaming with excitement. I was so, so happy that she really pulled it off. And then I was really excited for the movie. The movie comes out. I saw one trailer and then I was like, no more, don't want to see any more because I don't want to know anything about it. I don't want to know what the synopsis is. I don't want to know what reviews are. I don't want to see a trailer. I don't want to hear nothing. Don't want to know nothing about nothing. Well, by the time I did get around to seeing it, which was like the weekend that it came, premiered, I did already know by then, by accident, that it had a very high Rotten Tomatoes score, which made me pretty excited because at the time I had a little bit more faith in Rotten Tomatoes than I do now. Anyway, whatever. Went to go see it the Saturday that it opened. Oh, I will never forget that. That was one of the most fun experiences I have had in a movie ever. I will always have very fond memories of this film and how it made me feel. And she did such a good job. And the soundtrack was so good and the action was so good. And there was so much excitement. It was so well received. And I was so happy. And I was also happy that it did not get overridden with a man-hating sort of feminist type of agenda, which I was really, really afraid was going to happen because these things have been building for a while. That's a whole other subject for a whole other video, but I don't think I'll do that because I'm not going to get into that sort of stuff too much. That's not really what's going to be the primary focus of my channel, but it's going to come in from time to time. And yes, I was very concerned that was going to happen, and it did not. And I was so happy that it did not. I was like, oh my gosh, not only did they not ruin it and make it crappy with the way it was acted in the story, but they also didn't bring, divisiveness into the story. They didn't make it about that. They just made it about her experience and the things she learned, her disappointments in mankind, not men, mankind, humans, because of how flawed we are. And she goes out there, to help the world and to help people. And she had this very idealistic image of the way things were. And then when she found out that, no, we're just flawed people. It's not because, things are put in our heads. We're just by nature, we're very flawed and we do some very bad things. and she had hard lessons to learn. And anyway, it was so well done. The battle at the end, I really, really enjoyed it. Quite emotional, a couple of scenes for me at the end that still grabbed me, and I've seen this movie so many times, I've lost count. I dragged everybody to see this. I dragged, my son went with me and my family, my cousins, and we all went together to see it. And I loved it so much. I talked my daughter into going to see it. And then I dragged my parents to go see it. And then I ended up taking my husband to go see it. I mean, I think that was the film that I had seen the most in theaters, 4 times, up until Halloween 2018, which I saw 4.5 times in the theater. So anyway, whatever. Such a great film. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I find that really hard to believe, like so many of these other movies. If you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor and go watch this film. It is very well done. Okay, moving on to numero uno.
Same make.
These were taken at the West Highland Police Station, 1984. You were there.
Same model.
These were taken today.
You have to let me see my son. He's in great danger.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. If anybody knows me, they know this is my all-time favorite movie. Nothing has ever beaten it. As much as I love Wonder Woman and all the other films on this list, nothing has ever beaten Terminator 2 for me, and I really don't think that anything will ever beat Terminator 2 for me. From the moment this movie came out, I was blown away by it. I could not get it out of my head. I loved everything about this film. And of course, after I saw it many, many times, I started to spot little flaws in it, like little blooper, goofs and stuff like that. It wasn't really enough to take away my enjoyment of the film. But a few years ago, they came out with a remastered or fixed up sort of version that we went to go see, that my kids and I went to go see in the theater. And they then had the digital ability to fix a lot of these little mistakes. And now it's the perfect film. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's great. It's so good. They fixed the little issues with, when he's on the motorcycle and he jumps down off the wall. You can tell it's a stuntman. They put his face on there digitally. They did other things. Anyway, whatever. I absolutely love the Terminator. Love the Terminator. Then this came out and it was so good. And the way the story was constructed and the way the tension ebbed and flowed, or the action ebbed and flowed. It wasn't too much action. And then, it had the appropriate amount of action and then backing off, and kind of getting into the rhythm of the story, and then action and backing off, and then more story, to where finally they came to the conclusion, the final battle climax and everything. And it was really well done. Linda Hamilton blew me away. I was so amazed. I don't know what that was. Anyway, whatever. I was so amazed by her physical transformation, you guys. I wanted to be her. I wanted to have her muscles. I started incorporating more weight work. I mean, I already was exercising because Arnold Schwarzenegger was my, he was my inspiration to begin exercising as a teenager. Terminator 2 comes along and I see how absolutely cool and badass Linda Hamilton looked with those freaking arms. And I'm like, I want to look like that. Anyway, whatever. Her character undergoes not only a wonderful physical transformation, but the emotional and mental transformation that she had between the first and second movie. She's almost like a completely different character. This stress and burden that had been put on her and how it messes with her mind and it affects her emotions. And she is just not a happy person at all. And her son, John, they're kind of estranged because she's in a psych ward because society thinks she's crazy because she's doing stuff like trying to blow up computer factories. Well, it's because she knows what's coming in 1997, right? So anyway, the synopsis is that Arnold's Terminator, he comes back in time, this time to protect John Connor At the time, it was not known whether he was going to be good or bad, but it was revealed maybe about, I don't know, a fourth of the way through the film, or a little bit less, that he was actually there. He was a good guy. Anyway, my favorite version of this is the one that includes a lot of the scenes that they took out of the theatrical version, which includes the part where they go into his head to take out the chip so they can flip the switch, and he can start to learn on his own and process things like with more of a human type of intelligence. I felt that was a huge mistake to take that out of the theatrical cut. I remember that portions of that particular scene were in the trailer, and I remember noticing that part wasn't there when I went to go see it in the theater. I saw it only one time in the theater when it first came out. I took off work to go watch this movie, you guys. I was like, ain't nothing stopping me from watching this movie. Anyway, yeah, took off work that day. And then I went to go see it again, like in 1997 when not 1997, 2017, when it came back into theaters for like some sort of anniversary-ish sort of thing. What? No, maybe not. Whatever. It was back in theaters for a little while. 3D or something. I could do without the 3D, but it was the only way I could see it. So I'm like, I'm going to see it. So anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the scenes that they cut out. I think it was a mistake to cut that scene out. I could see why they cut some of the others out, but that one to me really should have stayed. I guess James Camp, they put a lot of effort into that scene too, y'all. They brought her twin sister in and they were doing all this filming. I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness, what a waste, you know. But anyway, now when I watch it on Blu-ray or DVD, I always watch that version. When it's on TV, obviously they show the theatrical version and they don't have that. But, you know, Terminator 2 is one of those movies where if I'm flipping through my Pluto TV app or whatever, and it's playing, I always stop and watch it. It's just, there's nothing that's gonna, you know, make me change my mind. So yeah, it's been my favorite since I saw it. Nothing has been able to overtake it. I really don't foresee that there will be anything that will overtake this movie for me. So that is why it makes my top spot, my number one, will always be my number one. But I will tell you that right before this became my number one, it dethroned the movie that used to be my number one, which I will now list as number 1.5.
In the 21st century, a weapon will be invented like no other. This weapon will be powerful, versatile, and indestructible.
The Terminator, where it all began. I mean, it's so connected. See, this is why it's like, it's hard to separate these two. I mean, obviously T2, it's like some of these films I wanted to leave on my list. I was like, well, really, logically, the only way I can do it is to very closely attach certain numbers. So number one has an attachment, 1.5, which is The Terminator. I very clearly remember the first time I saw this movie was not in theaters. At the time, I was a teenager. I didn't really go to theaters too much as a kid. I had gotten out of school early that day because I had a migraine and I thought I was going blind and scared me to death. And my dad he comes and gets me, takes me to the doctor. On our way home, we stop at the gas station, which had a video store attached to the gas station. And I had seen The Terminator on the shelves before and finally rented it that day. We get home, I'm feeling sick to my stomach because of the migraine, which I didn't know that was part of it. That was my first migraine of about 2 or 3 that I've had in my lifetime. They are not fun, you guys. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. We get home. As soon as I walk in the house, I throw up. And then when that's all done, I go and watch The Terminator. And it had such an impact on me. I loved the way it was put together. I loved the action. The story was so good. The synopsis, if anybody doesn't know, which this is the most unbelievable, I just can't imagine that nobody knows what the synopsis of this is. This Terminator, a cyborg from the future, is sent back to kill Sarah Connor before she can give birth to John Connor, who is going to be the leader of the resistance that rises up to successfully fight against the machines that have basically taken over. They've infiltrated the Skynet. They're part of the defense grid and all that stuff. And they've determined that humanity is a threat. And so they collectively decide they're going to wipe humanity off the earth. They start a nuclear war. That, apocalypse starts and all this. And people start to rise up and fight against the machines. And then time travel became a thing. And so they sent Arnold's character back. This was his groundbreaking role. He had been in Conan before this. Conan had come out before this. I remember seeing commercials for Conan. And I remember thinking Arnold was just a strange looking guy. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, very young teenager at the time. And I was like, oh, he's so funny looking. He had that gap between his teeth. He's big and muscular, very, stony face and everything. And then my parents, a few years after Conan, had seen Terminator. They'd gone to a motel or something and it had been playing, and they came back later and they told me all about it. And they're like, how good it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, And then while they're telling me about it, a commercial comes on showing a movie with Linda Hamilton in it called, I can't remember the name of that movie. It was a movie she was in with Tommy Lee Jones. It was showing a trailer for it. And they were like, that's that girl that played in that movie we were telling you about, And I was like, oh, okay. And then a few years, or like maybe 1 or 2 years after that, is when I saw it for the first time. And I have watched the ever-loving out of this movie. I used to get up early in the morning before school to watch this movie. In addition to Conan the Destroyer, I would do that too, and Lost Boys. But this one was just like, I made an audio recording of this thing, and I would listen to it sometimes when I was at work. I mean, I was absolutely obsessed with this film, you guys. It was just so well done. It's perfect. No, it's almost perfect, because Terminator 2 is perfect. No, this movie is it's pretty dang close to being perfect. I was very impressed with the whole thing. Obviously, if you can't tell, I've yammered on and on about these two movies, but I really love the way James Cameron brought this story to life. And it's funny that my favorite movie is a James Cameron film. And two of the movies that I hate the most out of all these movies I've seen are movies of his, Titanic and Avatar. And now he's making all these other Avatar movies. And I'm like, why? Just come back to the Terminator universe and make something better. I was super excited to see Dark Fate. And then when I saw it, I was super let down. And I remember I made a review for it, I think the very day I saw it. And I was much more kind in that review than I am now. Like the more time has gone by, the more I've had to think about it and what a wasted opportunity it was, the more angry I get at that movie, and how it basically I'm going to say words I shouldn't say, but basically it did such a disservice to the story and the characters and the fans, and it was absolutely disrespectful in my opinion. It might have been a fine action film, but it was a horrible Terminator film. And I hate to end this on a down note talking about sequels that are terrible, but I think of all the sequels that the one that has really grown on me the most has been Terminator Salvation. As far as I'm concerned, that's probably one of the better sequels. Terminator 3 was, it was just a repeat. After a while, the formula gets a little old, right? Even for films that you love. But Terminator Salvation took it and turned it in a different way, and I appreciated that. And it's definitely something that I have grown to appreciate more as time has gone by. So anyway, there's that, you guys. My top 10 films of all time. So far, these have just been pretty consistent in the top 10, or technically 12, but whatever. It's my list. I can formulate it however I want to. Anyway, that's just how I look at it, as I've already explained. So I have gone on and on, way too long about all this, but yeah, these are my favorites. It's kind of a strange collection. Obviously, as you can see, most of it is comprised of action stuff, horror stuff with regard to vampires and stuff like that. Not really horror, but whatever, with some different ones thrown in, like a couple of dramas, Black Stallion and a Warrior, and animated movie, Secret of NIMH. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's my list, you guys. What are your top 10 favorites? And I would say, do you agree or disagree with mine? But there's no such thing as complete agreement or disagreement when it comes to stuff like this, because it's all subjective, right? Everybody's top 10 list is different, and that's fine. But this is mine, and I wanted to share it because that's what my channel is about, talking about movies and stories and fun stuff like that. And I wanted to do something special for my 1-year anniversary. So, okay. Something dropped up there and scared the crap out of me. Whew. Okay. Anyway, it's past time for me to stop this recording. My computer is going to fry if I don't shut up. So, all right, you guys, that is it for now. Hasta luego.